Welcome to our fourth and final Great Decisions program. We appreciate your support this year. And I did want to just remind folks who may be here for the first time with us that if you've been filling out the Great Decisions opinion ballots, please leave those today. Turn those. I'll submit those after today's program, and you can also do it online. There's a link there in the program brochure as well. So we're really excited to have a topic today that actually, if many of you were here maybe for the first year we ran the program, human trafficking was one of our first programs for Great Decisions, and we brought in a speaker from the State Department who'd worked on the U.S. policy side. One of our goals with this program is always to try to bring at least one practitioner in, an ambassador, State Department, people who have been involved in diplomacy or in implementing foreign policy. So we're excited today to have actually a speaker who's been involved working with this working on this topic with survivors of human trafficking and human smuggling. So it's kind of a nice bookend for the program to begin with that topic and then also end this program this year with that. So again, please turn those in. If you do have questions, just a reminder again, during the break, we'll take about a 15-minute break after the talk. There's cards on the back table. Please fill those out, leave them in the basket, and then I'll go ahead and consolidate there. And then we do what we call a moderated Q&A. So I'll ask the question to the speaker and then she'll be able to respond to those. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kennedy Smith. Kennedy Smith is an intelligence and national security studies major, Spanish minor. Going to be going to Costa Rica over May semester break this year, and she's going to go ahead and introduce our speaker this morning.
Good morning. All right. Our speaker is LLhelm Daadaa. She is a Fulbright teaching assistant from Tunisia, teaching Arabic at Coastal Carolina University. Originally, she worked as a teacher and translator in Tunisia. She translates Arabic into English, French, and vice versa. Holding a cultural studies master's, her area of studies allow her to delve into different experiences. She has been involved in 3 projects related to migration and human rights. The first project is entitled Migrants in Countries in Crisis, assessing the situations of refugees fleeing from Libya to Tunisia and the repercussions of the experience, namely sex trafficking and smuggling of refugees. The second is tackling the environmental migration due to climate change. The third project is also related to migration and unemployment of Tunisian youth. As a Fulbright scholar, she is teaching to build bridge between her country and the United States and fulfill her duties as a cultural ambassador of both countries. So please join me in welcoming her to this program.
Thank you very much for this nice presentation. So I'm gonna do a brief introduction about the Fulbright program, maybe like shocking information or shocking videos. So try to be as easy with this as possible. Now, human trafficking is under the US law. It is the transport, soliciting, recruiting, harboring, and obtaining of another person for transport. And the primary purpose is either forced labor, domestic servitude, or sexual exploitation. The human trafficking is the transporting, soliciting, harboring, and providing any person for transport. And the primary purpose is forced labor, domestic servitude, and sexual abuse. So the primary tool of trafficking is force and coercion. So it's not like human smuggling. Smuggling is made by choice, and human trafficking is made by force. So the UN definition here is not very different from the US law definition, but it focuses on power and vulnerability. So there is a dialectic dimension here. So you have the power of the trafficker and the vulnerability of the trafficked. So trafficking and economy. Trafficking is actually a shadow economy, having so many profits and having so many profits for the people who are involved in it. It is a business industry denying freedom to 24.9 million people around the world, and it is a win-win business because globally from 8.5 to 12 billion euros are held with this profitable organization or this profitable business. And I found out that it is more profitable than drugs because one person can be sold and resold many times. And this is the process of trafficking. Actually, it starts with recruitment. Recruitment of people or of victims is starting from the rural areas. Some job offers also may lead you to be trafficked because they are most of the time fake job offers and services. And this will get you into a forced physical work and of course into sexual abuse. Then, after recruitment, we transport these victims, especially through transit countries like it happened in Libya. And then exploitation, and it takes many forms like sexual form, the sexual, the forced labor, the organ trafficking. Here are some statistics that I pulled out worldwide. So trafficking in persons is more than 800,000 people are being exploited in 2016, 31.6 billion in profit per year for the people who are involved in this business. 1 out of 7 children endangered runaways. We have 15.4 million victims forced into marriage, and 37% of them are children, sadly. We have 325,000 children are prone to sexual exploitation each year because why? Because they are the most vulnerable population here. According to the IOM, which is the International Organization of Migration, 27 of these children, and half of them is between 19 and 33 years old. This is a chart explaining the age group of people trafficked. So as you can see here, most of them are from 18 to 24 years old. We have here 46.95%. And here is the gender trafficking victims. We have, of course, women or girls more than men. And why? This is because we have sexual abuse involved. So this is the difference between trafficking and smuggling. As I said before, both of them are profitable businesses, but trafficking is different from smuggling because smuggling usually occurs in borders or over the borders, and it is, of course, a crime against the state, but smuggling is voluntary and trafficking is made by force. So the first form of human trafficking is sex trafficking, and it occurs in brothels, strip clubs, massage parlors, drug sex, or private homes. And it is involving 4 million individuals exploited for sex. 1 million of them are children, and 3 million are adults. Women and children, of course, are the most vulnerable target group. But LGBT community, and especially transgender individuals, are also most likely to be victims of sex trafficking. Trafficking and exploitation do not equate prostitution, because prostitution sometimes is a choice made by the victim, but trafficking is not. And the victim's consent is unwarranted if it is obtained in the name of trafficking. So here, we do not have anybody who is accepting to be trafficked. It's always through coercion and force. So I'm here pulling out some reasons or some processes of how sex trafficking or trafficking in general happens. It is almost the first reason, which is the promise of a good job in another country. So everybody who is looking for ads and looking for opportunities to work abroad may fall, actually, to sex trafficking. Or also, we have false marriage proposals turning into a bondage situation. So you may have someone proposing to you, and then it turns out to be sex trafficking or trafficking in general. And I found out that many people are trafficked by their husbands, by their fiancés, by their boyfriends, and this is shocking. So then they get kidnapped by traffickers. Also, the internet plays an important role in nurturing this business through false ads, escort services, and street walkers. Pornography, which is very nurturing of this business. actually targets children from 8 to 12 years old and expose them to trafficking. And also, traffickers may have been abused in their childhood, and this is what pushed them into this business, because again, it is lucrative. So the most vulnerable, as I said earlier, those who have unstable living conditions, like homelessness, poverty, and domestic violence, or even they have a member or a caregiver having a substance abuse issue who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. Most of them also are undocumented migrants, so they are prone to this victimization. The other type of people vulnerable are drug addicts or unaccompanied minors. So the signs. These are the most signs I pulled out, but here I'm bearing your attention to focus with anyone you see in the street, because each and every one of us can be trafficked in any place, at any time, and especially during the summer, and I'm gonna do this later. So any person that you see very dependent on his job and cannot leave it may be a victim of human trafficking. Someone who does not have any control over his or her wages. Someone who is always accompanied by someone else talking for him or speaking on his behalf. He's actually lacking identification documents like ID, passport, and does not have any control over them. Might be a victim of human trafficking. He is unfamiliar with the neighborhood because most of them are transported into other places they do not know, so they do not know the environment they're in. They always appear to be fearful and under the control of someone else. And they have a restricted freedom of movement, which is a human right, actually. So this is all against human rights. And he is a labor or domestic servant that does not leave his place or is not allowed to do it, or else he's also a victim of debt bondage to his master. So this is a new kind of slavery, but slavery ended up with the plantation system. Now we have new systems occurring, a new system taking place to have slavery in place. And as I said, they're unfamiliar with their surroundings. They fear also authority and law enforcement techniques or actions. Most of them do not go and try to get help from the authorities because they fear they're most of the time threatened by their masters and threatened by people who are in charge of them. They cannot tell anyone about their conditions, no care providers, no organizations. The people I worked with, for example, those who were survivors of human trafficking, were not even prepared or were not even ready to share with me their information about human trafficking, even though I was working with the IOM, which is the International Organization of Migration, and it is an organization really concerned with the situation of these migrants. So most of them do not know the laws, cultures, and languages of the place they're in. So language barrier acts as a vehicle to make traffickers profit from these vulnerable persons, and they are most of the times in debt to their traffickers. So here I am trying to find, yes, so Myrtle Beach, and it is here where I came and I showed my program, my Fulbright program. Turns out to be the hottest area of human trafficking. And it is ranked the 8th state on the dirty dozen of most of the states. Actually, Horry County accounts for 4.7 out of 68% of human trafficking. Most of you might not know, because when I looked up Myrtle Beach, the only thing I found out is the beach, the attractions, everything, but this is the hidden business, and every time I need you to focus with the signs I just showed, so that you can save someone from human trafficking. You can be actually life-changing in his Yes, you can change his life forever because you saved him from the grips of his master. So as I said, Greensville, Richland, and Dorchester, and Charleston are on the top 5 states of human trafficking here in the state of South Carolina. Here are some of the states really which are the worst states. So the Dirty Dozen includes Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, South Dakota, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. So we have actually 700 persons victims of human trafficking, and also cases of human trafficking arose by 29 from the last year. There is an increase in cases, and this is because people are reporting. So each time you report a case of human trafficking, you're helping someone get rid of his slavery, get sometimes help from authorities and from care providers. So the thing I want you to focus with is holidays. So summertime is usually the time where you spend your time by the beach, you visit family, you enjoy your life, you meet new friends, but here it turns out to be the hot season of human trafficking. This is because traffickers are snatching their victims out of malls, out of beaches, out of parties. So try to be cautious with this, especially young generations. It's here where you have to focus. So some victims also may show loyalty to their captors. So this is what makes the process of reporting sometimes complicated. So when they are rescued, they do not disclose their status, and they do not tell about their conditions, and they do not tell also health providers what is wrong with them, which makes their conditions in the the lawsuit process very complicated. So our beautiful South Carolina here passed a law in 2012, which became effective in December 2012 as well. And this law actually does not only include traffickers, it also includes people who conspire and participate in trafficking ventures. And the lawsuiting includes 15 years in prison for the first offense and 15 additional years if the trafficker is a minor. Business owners are also engaged in trafficking. They could either find or they lose their business forever. They have to provide, this law actually provides restitution and civil action availability for victims. It asks assets forfeiture by convicted traffickers. And I'm here pulling out the national hotline for human trafficking that will be useful for you because here, as I said, South Carolina is really endangered by human trafficking. So try to focus with this number. If you can write it down, it will be useful and it will save millions and millions of people. So this is a quote by Horry County Sheriff Sherry Smith. He said that traffickers can target your young children. And here I'm focusing with the social media networks. They can be like most of the teenagers and most of the children today are very dependent on their social media networks like Facebook, Instagram, any means of chatting. And this is actually related to the things they post about their school or home. Whenever they post, for example, I am home alone, I am going to a party in that place, I'm going to, and we people of technology today, we love to share about our locations and where we are going to, and this might be a trick for traffickers to catch you, and then it becomes way complicated. So I am here also talking about the fetal organ trafficking, which is the most shocking data I got in this presentation. So actually, the state of California had 2 cases about fetal organ trafficking. So yes. So this is the most The most dangerous type of trafficking I found out, they take completely the intact embryos, fetuses, beating hearts, and there is a type of child harvesting of organs of the babies that are actually alive. And also abortion here helps people harvest the organs of babies, like killing born alive babies for the sake of organ trafficking. And actually this business is $1.1 million to $1.5 million for people who are profiting from this business. They all harvest livers, lungs, brains, and also resell them to taxpayer-funded organizations. And this is also working for the sake of research-based laboratories. Now, I have New York City. So here, I'm putting a picture of the nicest place in New York City. And sadly, New York City turns out to be the hub of human trafficking. So near Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Bridge, lays one of the city's dirtiest secrets. They keep minor girls of 16 years old and held them captives for 100 of days. Actually, the New York Police Department rescues one person each week, busted 208 pimps, and worked 265 sex trafficking cases. This is shocking for people who do not know about human trafficking that is invading, I can say, the United States and invading cities, big cities. And New York City is a harbor to sex trafficking because most of the people who migrate and who travel choose it as their state of stay. So here I found out that 44% versus 9% of the cases happen in the hotels, 52% versus 7% in New York happens in the child's home, 75% versus 28% happens in an adult stranger's place. And most of the time, it was an adult friend or acquaintance that catch them into sex trafficking. 58% of these cases are using force. And this is because identification is so hard, so we cannot identify all of the people involved in sex trafficking. Most of the time, victims are masking their underage status. They are so reluctant to participate in treatment or in lawsuiting these violators, and reluctance of service providers to identify children as victims of sex trafficking. Sometimes there are some doctors that refuse to release information about these victims just as a way to shy from the laws. Now, trafficking also happens in the Arab world. And I'm picking here some interesting places like Saudi Arabia and Dubai. Dubai, which is very beautiful, very well known for tourism. So I find out that wherever you see tourism, there is always sex trafficking or human trafficking in general. So human trafficking happens through debt bondage and labor trafficking. Actually, it targets migrants from South and East Asia, Africa, who are very vulnerable to labor trafficking, those who dream to work elsewhere and provide remittances to their families back home. So it actually makes males work in constructions and manufacturing, and women work as domestic servants. Sorry. Here, the kafala system, which is taking someone and taking care of him, like raising him in your house, is very nurturing of trafficking. Gulf countries also their agreements with source countries over the migrants' abuse are not binding. So whenever they take someone, or whenever a migrant comes to Saudi Arabia or to the Middle Eastern countries, for example, there is a binding law which offers protection to these migrants, but most of the time the Gulf countries do not abide by it. They actually violate it. So the Saudi law requires job contracts to be in Arabic and only in Arabic, and does not provide any English translation to it, which might be tricky because they caught people into trafficking while they do not know anything about it, and they can sign anything in the contract they do not understand. So there might be something tricky in the contract. So they force them to sign contracts they cannot read or understand, and this is most of the time because of the language barrier. This turns out to be a new contract with new terms that the candidate does not know anything about them, and which offers them lower pay, longer working hours, and also like terrible working conditions. Most of the time, the passport here is revocated. So they take their passports and they made them work under awful conditions. They give them false promises, like people from Africa, for example, look for contracts abroad in the Gulf countries. They find they actually looking for the position of teachers, child care providers, and they turn out to be in the street serving as sex prostitutes. And also, if sexual abuse does not occur in this situation, the threat to rape is always existing. So there is a legislation passed in 2013 offering some protection to domestic law workers, but this still does not apply to domestic workers because the gangs are always working more and more to keep more people under their grips. They're still making 700 Saudi riyal from begging in the streets, and they also profit from the Syrian refugees from Lebanon and Jordan to work as sex slaves. There are also some threats in refugee camps that made people also sell their daughters to forced marriage in exchange for money, because most of the time their situation is very bad and they need to do this as a way to gain some money. So the bride's prices ranges from $100 to a few $1,000s. So imagine if you're poor and homeless, and you're gonna go to sell your daughter to forced marriage, and you have no law to protect this. This is a kind of compliance of the Saudi government because it finds it very lucrative, and it can also take so many profits out of it. I am here pulling out the Egyptian and organs trafficking. So as it happened in California, it also happens in Egypt and in Libya, but here I'm focusing mostly about Egypt. So it targets illegal migrants because, as I said earlier, Egypt is in the border, so they come from Sudan, from Chad, from Eritrea. Eritrean people are so prone to organ trafficking. They want to migrate to Europe, and their only way is to sell a kidney, a liver, whatever they can sell to these traffickers and smugglers in order to achieve their dreams, which is money, and money to their people back home. So actually, we had 700 incidents of organ trafficking happening from North Africa and the Middle East. And this is also blustered by an EU-funded clampdown of refugees by security forces. So as a way to reduce migration, it turns out to be that the EU is not very helpful with like alleviating the situation of these victims. So your only way to go to Europe is to donate an organ. As I said, it's a liver, it's a heart, it's a kidney. And this is the case of Asha, who was promised $2,000 to go to Europe. And if you do not give out your organ, they're also going to take it by force, and you're going to be threatened for life. You're going to be threatened, and they're going to look after you. Now, Libya, which is the country I worked on during the post-revolution period. So after the revolution broke out in 2011 in Tunisia, we had so many people coming so many Libyans or so many migrants from sub-Saharan Africa coming to Tunisia as a way to flee from persecution in Libya. So when the civil war broke down there, they had only Tunisia as their way and their transit country to Europe. And these African migrants are usually caught by the smugglers and put in detention camps where the conditions are so awful, where people take profit of them, may sell them to other traffickers, may also provide them with fake contracts abroad. So it's only about the fake promise. And this is a quote from a survivor of human trafficking. He said, "We were lied to. They beat us with sticks and water hose. They were electrocuted us. We told them we had no money, but they did not stop from beating us." So it's actually money which is the vehicle or the thing that encourages people to traffic people. Because as I said, it's a lucrative business and it does not stop making money for people who are profiting from it. So if you want to make more money, you have to buy or you have to sell this person over and over. And also, I'm going to show a video by the end of this presentation showing how people are bought in the slave market in Libya. So this is all because of the impunity and absence of the rule of law, because as I said earlier, Libya was stateless at that time, and also there is a reluctance from international organizations like the United Nations, like the UNHCR. So migrants usually either survive the sea they survive like drowning in the sea just to pay more than $1,500 to smugglers. As I said, smuggling is done by choice, not by force, but most of the time it is not. So people or migrants try to willingly pay these smugglers just to enter to another European country. And also there are different types of trafficking included, like the physical type of trafficking, the sexual, verbal assault, abduction from ransom, arbitrary killings, and child soldiering. So they take these child that may be these children actually belong to these families or to this group of migrants. They were taken into child soldiering. So here we are actually coming back to the issue of vulnerability. Here I'm pulling out a video.
We've arrived in Tripoli and we're starting to get a little bit of a better sense of how this all works. Our contacts are telling us that essentially there are auctions 1 to 2 times a month and that there is one happening within the next few hours. So we're going to try and head out of town and see if we can at least get some sort of sense of how it works, where it is, and how this all plays out.
We've been waiting the last few hours just to receive word as to whether the auction has started. We now understand that there are 2 separate auctions going on in this town that we're in and in a town only 20-30 minutes away. And it looks like we will be able to go in and witness how this all happens.
400 500 550 300 650 800
عاوزين نرجع عشان نحكي شوية يعني بقدر هو مستمر المزاد؟
لا خلاص
خلاص هو كان كم نفر؟
12 نفر.
12.
I'm speechless. I don't know how to put this into words. There were human beings auctioning off other human beings. And even though there didn't appear to be any weapons that we can see, these people were brought out from that room one by one. And the whole environment, the whole feel was one of duress. The utter casualness of that. I mean, when we walked in, there was clearly a lot of nervousness, a lot of suspicion, and people started covering their heads, but they still kept going, and they were referring to these human beings that they were selling as merchandise.
This is what happened in Libya and left many victims under hard psychological and physical conditions. So I believe that your presence here is one way or a step forward to fight against human trafficking anywhere. Now you know the signs, so please try to focus and keep an eye on smugglers and traffickers everywhere, so that to cap this business industry and pull it into and do much action about it. Thank you for being here. I'm so proud of our Coastal Carolina University that it tackled this issue. I look forward to any questions from you, and thank you for your attention during this presentation. I also apologize for any shocking information or videos that I showed during this presentation. Thank you very much.
Why would a university or research institution accept organs from unknown sources, from people trafficking them? And then is there any action actually being taken against those universities for doing that?
So there's actually no action taken against them, and they find that taking this organ from an unknown person could help them shy away from the laws and make profit of it. And it's an easy way to do research with an unknown organ from anybody than to take it out of, for example, a dead body or someone who is helping or helping them donate or something. It's way easier and way more profitable.
But have you heard of any universities actually being held to account, or the government actually cracking down on them for doing that?
I heard that in California there are 2 cases against universities, but that was not so popular, and they don't want to make it really public because it's a shame, of course, from a human rights perspective.
How does an average American stand up to human trafficking? What steps should we take to help prevent these, we know, our loved ones from being trafficked?
So you need to focus with the signs I pulled out earlier and try to see if you suspect someone who is trying to lure you into trafficking. Don't advise them not to fall into fake promises. If someone is promising them something really extravagant and luxurious, don't ever fall into this trap, because and try to be cautious, try to be vigilant over your loved ones, try to know more about the laws also that protect them from human trafficking, and try to find the authorities and the exact partners that may help you, the organization that may help you fight against human trafficking. There is also the national hotline. It has to, I encourage everyone here in this room and also elsewhere to call this national hotline if you suspect anybody who is trafficking someone else, or if you find any of the signs or the symptoms I just pulled out here in the presentation. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was the follow-on question about the national hotline. What personal information would someone have to provide if they do use that hotline? Would we have to give our personal information?
You don't have to give your personal information, because this is private. So you just need to pull out the case and to provide as many details of the case you saw as possible, and just to provide the exact time, the exact location, and try to describe the situation as it is. Try to be as precise as you can.
Okay. Is it more sex-positive, progressive societies, or is it conservative, prudish societies that are more likely to practice sex trafficking?
Both of them, actually. Yeah, both of them. Didn't you see Saudi Arabia? Like the Holy Land is the actual hub of sex trafficking and labor trafficking as well. So it happens everywhere and at any time.
Do you think better economic development and opportunity will lower the rate of trafficking, or is that a deeper-rooted problem than that?
So we cannot cap down profit. Each time you wanna have more money, you will fall into the trafficking business, because it will give you more opportunities for more money and more wealth. So profit is the driving force behind trafficking, or else people can shy away from it. It is still thriving and still growing, because you need to take, or people cannot limit their lust for power.
Okay. Can you comment about the roles of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Justice, or other U.S. agencies regarding combating human trafficking?
Yes, actually, but here I will invite Mrs. Betty to the partner here to talk about the U.S. role about combating human trafficking. She might be more knowledgeable more knowledgeable than me, so I kindly invite her to come to talk about it to the audience. And thank you very much.
I don't know if I can speak for Homeland Security.
Can you go ahead and stand at the microphone at the podium?
I'm known to have a loud voice, so
We're good.
Use your teacher voice.
Make sure it's turned on, the switch.
Is it on?
Yes.
If it isn't, you'll hear me anyway. Homeland Security, they have the big campaign.
Can you tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Betty Ubion. I'm just a citizen like most of you. I don't really have a job. I don't have any income. Some people would say I'm vulnerable for that. I think it's made me quite strong, actually. Once upon a time, I did work. My background is in community, economic, and social development. And I did work for a bank, and at one time I was actually a buyer and worked in human resources. I did work. But I've traveled a lot, been around, got into working to address human trafficking way back when the first laws were passed federally, and when Homeland Security picked it up, and when FBI picked it up. Here in South Carolina, the hotline, that hotline number that you showed, what is that again? 1-888-3.
373-7888.
Very good, yes. There is now a text line too, Be Free. And I don't know the numbers for those. We no longer have telephones that have numbers with the thing. But we do have posters in that we pass out and give out with all of that. Victims are self-identifying more and more, and we're working on more and more of that. But in South Carolina, overall, the industry, it's an illegal industry. It's moving very fast and becoming the #1 industry. As a result, Homeland Security and FBI have just taken it right to the top of their priorities. It is classified under civil rights. Homeland Security, you'll see it all over airports. See something, say something. They mean it. I discovered that Homeland Security has a little policy that's actually law, that if we see something and we don't report it, we could be arrested for withholding information. And I was talking to some police about that, and they didn't know about that. So check it out. But basically, you'll get off of that and you won't get charged with that. So notice that we're getting more and more signs. See something, say something is very, very important. We lit up the Sky Wheel on January 11th, National Observance Day and Prevention Day for human trafficking. That's the second year in a row we have that here in South Carolina, in Myrtle Beach. It's law enforcement, top to bottom, is becoming more and more acquainted with it, and that's what we need to do. We need to help them understand how human trafficking functions, and Homeland Security is providing a lot of information. FBI is providing information about that. And Polaris Project, which LLhelm pulled a lot from, is the #1 place to go for information. I don't know what you wanted me to say about these places and these organizations, but they are working on everyone's behalf, because this crime, this illegal business or industry, has grown so much worldwide and very fast, and money goes to the heart of corruption. The UN did an objective report about it 2 years ago on human trafficking and corruption. Corruption is the driving force or engine of human trafficking. Corruption. Who's at the top of corruption? Do you really want me to say this?
Yes.
Aside from professions, it's customs and border patrol people. It's second in line, law enforcement at all levels. Third, politicians, and everybody else falls out after that, 16 different professions. Above them, because remember, I had a general come up to me last year at an InfraGard meeting, and he stood before me and he said, "You know why you aren't getting any answers or action?" I said, "Well, I can guess." And he said, "Because these are powerful people, very powerful people in this with lots of money." I go, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Can I ask you a different question while you're there? I think it's something you mentioned during the break when we were talking.
Okay.
Said, as seniors, it may concern us that people 55 and over are also victims. How might this group also be of interest to abusers?
Yeah. 80% of the victims of sex trafficking are women 35 and older, falling really between 45 and 50. Men are not exceptional. They have risen up too. So one of the reasons why, and particularly in other countries, I'm not sure about here, but I know in somewhere I've traveled, we were warned because women in those countries die early. People do in a lot of countries, earlier than we do in this country. So we're traveling out there, 60, 70, 80 years old, hiking mountains, rowing boats across lakes, and whatever else. We are healthy. And healthy women in their 70s then are very high, are valued very much. High value to the trafficker. High value. Plus, we won't have children, which gets in the way of traffickers. Mm-hmm. So our group, I was with a group in Burma, Myanmar, and we made sure that we stayed together wherever we went, and that we looked for security. So it's something to be aware of. Right now, I got a call from another organization to help a woman who escaped from Kosovo with her 2 kids, teenagers. And we needed to put her into witness protection. She wasn't under the FBI and that. So with some of the FBI people whom I know, I created her own witness protection program for her and her kids. And I told her never to call me unless she really needed to. And we gave her the resources and that. But because she's well known in her country. And what we have in this country are a lot of people from Kosovo who would know her. And we don't know who they are, what they are, or if they're in connection with the people who tried to kill her over in Kosovo. That's the thing about the US. It's what we already know. I'm going to tell you what you know. We're a big country geographically, we're a big country in population, and we're a big country in diversity. And that everything that comes with people from other countries, they bring them here, good, bad, or not. Human trafficking, you really want me to tell them it was over? It
Yes.
might be.
Actually, I've got more questions for Ellen, so I think this
Okay.
would be a good break.
It's
for
her
Ellen to
thing.
come back up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When countries are involved in conflict, like Saudi Arabia or Yemen, do you notice that more people are trafficked than those countries than during times of peace?
Yes, because as I said earlier, stateless countries or places where there is a chaos, there is a political upheaval, are mostly prone to be helping traffickers to do their job and to keep victims in hold.
Can you comment on some of your experience working with the migrant camps and others? Are human traffickers caught and brought to account? We don't hear much about it in the news.
We don't hear much about it because we cannot catch them and we cannot get access to them, as I told you before, because it is somehow part of the victim's hiding something about his prosecutor, and part of the laws also that cannot actually keep that person into or catch this person and give it to law authorities.
Can you elaborate on the influence of pornography in that industry as it affects human trafficking or the sex trade? Slave trade, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so pornography, as it is available to everyone on the internet, and with the growth of this virtual business and industry, so everyone can have access to pornography, and it is actually nurturing the value of sex and the importance of sex in somebody's life, and this makes people like more prone. And as I said, it's all about interest and it's all about money. So this pornography programs or films or anything related to pornography makes people normalize that sexual violence, normalize sexual abuse, and then will be an easy prey for people to be trafficked in sex industries.
Do you think that race, ethnicity, or religious background or cultural norms play into trafficking?
So, as far as I think or I believe, nothing can escape trafficking. So, if you're African, if you're American, black, white, anybody can be trafficked and anybody can be caught in this dirty job of trafficking people and depriving them from their liberty and keeping them into slavery. Because they sell it and resell it again. So, as I said, the business of trafficking is growing because you sell and resell things. So, it's not like something you buy it and keep it for yourself. It is sold and sold so many times, and this is a part of the growth of the human trafficking business. Like and this comes to our mission here, me and Betty, it's always about awareness and it's always about reporting to the police, reporting to the organizations, to the government, to anybody you know that is capable of fighting against human trafficking. Please report. You have the hotline. You have also here some ways to report against human trafficking. Don't be afraid to be caught in this business because you know now the symptoms and you know everything about it. Just follow the rules and speak to the government, speak to the victims, and know and inquire about their situation. And this will help many people get saved in this country or elsewhere.
Well, Ellen, thank you very much for your
Thank
time. You're a
you
great
so
cultural
much.
ambassador.
Thank you.